Well, I'm here at Jones Marine Electronics, and look who just rolled up. Let's go see what he's getting put on. Hey Thunder, what are you doing to Spencer's boat?
So we're going to add one of our Trident mounts on here for his live scope.
Same thing?
Same thing.
Nice. And he's running, if you guys remember when we did the big boat search, my top 3 boats were, and not in any order actually, was Bass Cat, Blazer, and Phoenix. And Spencer, you said this is your 5th one or 6th one?
5th 650, and I've had one 625. I love them.
Yeah.
They're great boats, big, lots of room, fast, big front deck.
I can't remember. What's the length on this boat?
This boat is 21.6.
21.6. That's a great big boat.
Yep.
And it's pretty quick.
It is, yeah. I mean, I keep mine loaded down. I've probably got, I'd say, around 550, 600 pounds, and my box is up front, and I run about 71.
Yeah, that's solid.
That's with 2 guys.
2 guys, right, yeah. Everywhere y'all go is 2 guys.
Yep. So it's a good running boat. For sure.
Garmin's all the way around and NBT on the front. You were one of the first NBT guys, weren't you?
On tour, I think it was. I know John Canada had one, but you know, I mean, that was mainly a crappie fisherman deal. It seems like mainly everything that's fast guys have been adopted. The crappie guys a lot, especially when they revolve around live scope. But man, I love that unit, that 22 inch. You know, now they've come out with 18, so I think I'm gonna run the 18 next year.
That's what we just put on my boat.
Yeah, I like that size. I mean, 22 ain't too big. But like, I'm only running 2 graphs up front, and I'm running forward and perspective. So I've got a 12-inch Garmin up there, that 22-inch NBT, and I have quick button saved to go from perspective back to mapping, and it's fine. But I'd rather be able to see it all in one picture without having to switch back and forth.
Yep.
And I've got that saltwater transducer for the perspective, so I can see the bottom literally in 30 foot of water, clear as day now.
So you're the first person that I know have talked to personally that's gone from the LVS, the 30 series to the 6 series. What's your experience been?
Well, I mean, for forward, I haven't ever used the 62 for forward. I've only used it for perspective, and I've had it about 3 months now. I ran the 34 for perspective for about 4 months. And like, if you're in 10 foot or less, the 34 is incredible. Like, especially if you want to use it sight fishing, like say they're spawning next to cypress trees or on the sides of dock walkways, around seawalls, things where you don't have to get real close to see them, or the water's too dirty, and shallow inside edge grass lines, shallow bluegill beds, stuff like that, stumps, shallow stumps. The 34 for perspective is absolutely incredible. It's so clear, so detailed that I've noticed. But that 62, I can literally see the bottom. I can see boulders as deep as 35 foot of water. So like, for smallmouth fishing and say brush pile fishing and things like that, I think the 62 is the way to go. Being able to see bait deeper, like the 34, I would use it a lot. I would run it out to like 120 range and find bait balls that way, because you get to see the broad picture, but you couldn't really see them if they were deeper in like 8 foot of water. But that 62, like, I was up at Champlain and I was finding balls of alewives on perspective as far as 150, 175 foot away from the boat, because the range is so much broader with it, and you can see them as deep as 25 foot. I mean, they really stand out and pop. And it was cool because you would literally see the smallmouth sitting under them. You could see that white little streak on perspective around them bait balls, and then I would turn my boat left if that's where they were, or right, and I would go to them with my forward, because I only was running my forward on like 110 foot range, and I was running that perspective on 200, and it was just nice. But the problem with the 62 is if you want it for something, say 10 foot or less, I don't advise to get it for that, because I've tried using it on some shallower bodies, more like the James when we were there, Chowan, and you just can't see very good with the 62 in less than 10 foot of water, in my opinion. Like, things are kind of fuzzy because it's so much of a more powerful transducer that I feel it makes things fuzzy and real high sensitivity. It seems like your sensitivity is too high. Maybe I need to try to adjust that, work with it. But really what I got the 62 was for deeper water, and that's really the only thing I'm going to use it for, I think.
Okay, I'm going to do a cutaway here because we actually had a conversation here. So Spencer has practical knowledge of using the units, but no technical knowledge. I have neither, and Taylor and actually the Jones team, They've just installed the LVS62 for the first time on Yoder's boat this past week. So they don't really have a lot of experience with it either. I think this is going to be a direction we're going to see a lot of guys going. But I was probably the most mistaken of the group right off the bat. And by the way, so we wound up calling Zach with Garmin and said, okay, why is the LVS62 working in deep water better than the LVS34? And my first thought, which is I was the most wrong, was I assumed it was a different transducer cone angle, and it's not. It's the same. So the next thought was maybe it's different power. And if you see at the bottom of the page, exactly the same power, which is kind of what Spencer was saying. It was a more powerful unit. That's not what it is. What it is its frequency. And by the way, I am a numbers guy. I am not an electronics technician guy, but I love learning this stuff. And what you'll see here is these two units run at substantially different frequencies. So the LVS32 operates in that 500 to 1,000 kilohertz, forgive me if I'm getting that wrong, band range, while the LVS62 runs at about half that. And so if you do a little bit of research, which you guys know is exactly what I did, you will find that, actually, let me show you another slide I've got right here. What you'll find is lower frequency is absorbed less in the water than high frequency, and therefore it will travel longer distances. But it's interesting, Spencer was spot on. Without the technical knowledge, he had the practical knowledge to know that there was a higher ambient noise level at those lower frequencies, which is why when he was trying to use the 64 to look at stuff shallower, he wasn't getting, he couldn't figure out why he couldn't tune out all the ambient noise. Well, it's because you have more in lower frequencies, which is why he'll figure this out. If he doesn't see this video and know this, he has the perfect setup using the LVS34 for stuff up close and the LVS62 for deeper water with this perspective view. Sort of finished kind of that thought, and I can't remember if he says this on camera or when we're just kind of talking on the side. He said that, as you can see here, these are my units. You'll see this fishing on Thursday's video when Taylor and I got out. When you have both perspective and forward view running, you get some crosstalk, right? You get some interference, and we've all experienced that. Guys who've tried to run live scope in 360, guys who've tried to run anything that runs in that same bandwidth, you get crosstalk. Well, Spencer says his crosstalk has basically disappeared, which makes complete sense now because he's running that 34 at a higher frequency, the 62 at a much lower frequency, and therefore they're not really interfering with each other, which is, I think, why we're going to see more and more guys, not just for the ability to see way out further in deeper water, but also to cut down the crosstalk. You're going to see more guys go to that setup of having two completely dissimilar LVS forward imaging transducers going forward. So let's go back to our conversation with Spencer now.
I think what I'm going to do...
And you're about to go on a north swing, right?
I am. I mean, I fished Champlain and got to use it. I went to St. Lawrence before it went off limits for 3 days and used it. And man, I'm just telling you, it's incredible for smallmouth fishing out deep. Finding isolated boulders and stuff, because the deal is you don't have to run your perspective or your forward. Like I said, I like to keep it in that 110 to 120 foot range looking out, but that perspective I can run on like 200, and when I'm going down contour line scoping, I'm also getting to see 200 foot left, right, and out in front of me boulders. I can see this stuff coming up, so I can slow down before I get to it and really, pan left and right with my forward and see if there's fish sitting on those objects. And then like yesterday I went to Washita and we caught them really good on outside edges of grass, and it's easy, it's so nice with that 62. Grass on Washita right now is like 20 to 22 foot deep on the outside edge, and I can see those little turns in the outside edge of the grass lines out deep that I couldn't ever seen before with the 34.
When you're running perspective and traditional, are you running them split screen on the NBT?
No, that's what I was saying. Like on my 34 for forward, I only use the 22 inch for that. That's it, my MBT unit. I've got a 12-inch Garmin EcoMap Ultra that sits above my MBT, and I run my map and perspective on it. Garmin's got those on EcoMap Ultras. There's 4 quick buttons, and I run map on one. map and sonar on 2, and then I got perspective saved on 3 and 4. And I've just switched back and forth. Like if I want to look at perspective, I'll hit forward and I'll look for a little bit, and then I'll switch back to my map, and to make sure I'm staying on my contour lines the way I want. But you know, really, I mean, mapping's awesome, but nowadays with forward, I mean, you basically see the drops and everything coming up and stuff before you get to them.
Right.
You really ain't got to have mapping contours, honestly. But it's still, you know, that's what we've always had, and it's hard to get away from having it, just because that's what I'm used to.
Sure.
So, but I think next year on my boat, I'm going to switch to the 18 like you did, NBT, and that way I can run 2 12s up front, one for perspective, and one for mapping.
2 18s.
I think not. I don't know. I mean, I might go to 2 18s. The deal is can we get 2 18s and a 12 on the same front deck? So it'll probably be an 18 and 2 12s is what I'll do. 2 12 Eco Map Ultras, one for perspective, one for mapping, and then my 18 MBT for forward. So I just like having my forward on the bigger screen. One day I did run, I did swap my stuff around, my connections, and I did run perspective on the 22-inch MBT. I was going to tell you, it was incredible. I mean, it was unreal how awesome it was having perspective on that 22-inch screen. But I use forward more than I use perspective.
Right.
And it's just, I'd rather have forward on the bigger screen.
So would you say that you find them fish or structure with the perspective and you catch them with forward?
Probably. I mean, you know, I'm still real new at the perspective. Like I've used it on and off some throughout the last 3 or 4 years, but this year is the first year I've really used perspective. And you know how it takes several months to kind of get everything in your head when you see it and start learning, all right, this is exactly what I'm seeing, to get used to that. But I definitely would say I'm learning with that 62 anyways. With the 34, I feel like it was no real benefit to me as far as finding stuff that I couldn't already see with forward. But now I got that 62, the range is so much bigger with it that there's no doubt the smallmouth, lakes where you're fishing boulders and stuff like that, or lakes like where you're from down there, Rayburn and Toledo Bend, where you're looking for brush piles even, potentially that 62 is very beneficial because you can see it 50 to 60 feet before you would with the 34 effectively. I can see that stuff and so much deeper too, you know. But I think finding schools of fish that are following bait and things like that is a big deal nowadays with the Demiki and everything that's gotten so popular over the last year.
By the way, guys, Spencer was talking about it. So you see the size difference. And I believe the 6 Series was designed to be saltwater, right?
It is, yep.
Yeah. But we lost a battery there a minute ago. You were saying, in your experience so far, there's a big difference in perspective mode.
Yeah, there is. I mean, honestly, in my opinion, all around, if you could only pick between the 34 or the 62 for perspective, I would go 62, 100%. Just because of the fact the broader range it has. I mean, you've got all the deep stuff. Like you can see the bottom very clear in 30 foot of water with the 62 as opposed to the 34. I mean, really, once you get deeper in about 12 foot of water, really everything kind of goes dark. So I've heard of guys being able to see pretty good with the certain adjustments and stuff. They can see as deep as 20 with the 34, not like real well, but they can see enough to make out what they're wanting to see. But with that 62, there's no comparison in my opinion deeper than 15 foot. I mean, you see everything clear as day. So I like the 62 overall for perspective. But for me, I mean, I know some guys will run the 62 even for forward. In comparison with the 34, like they've got them together, like where they're using the 34 in forward and the 62, so they can see way out and see schools of fish and stuff 250, 300 foot away from them. But you know, I mean, that's not something I ever plan to do. I just think the 62 basically is going to serve a good purpose for perspective, really.
Cool deal. And I asked permission. One of the things I love to do when I sit down or get around a guy who fishes professionally is to go through his boat. I want to see how he stores his tackle, and truthfully, I want to see if he's got something I don't have. And so I asked Spencer, I said, can I go through your boxes? And he said, sure. So I found something I'd never seen before, and it looks like they're pretty hard to find, but I'll just share with you what I saw here. I'm snooping through Spencer's boat. So he said that's all line that he just carries with him in the boat, and he's got trebles, and then that's all. You said chatterbait trailers?
Chatterbait trailers.
But this I've never seen before. Now, not saying that I know all about tackle management, but I saw those tubes in there and I said, what is that? And he said, that's his jerkbait tubes.
Yep.
And he carries two of them. He carries one for deep and one for shallow.
Yep.
And I mean, that's
Yep.
2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. So you've got at least 60 jerkbaits in there.
Yeah, that's all shallow diving ones, and then all my deeps are
Oh
in
yeah, I
that
see
one
it
there.
over there.
So, yeah, it's pretty good little jerkbait system for sure. Depending on the size jerkbait, like the junior one, the Megabass juniors, you can get like 3 in a hole. I think I got some juniors.
Yeah, a lot of those are 3 in a hole.
Yeah.
That's cool. I've never seen that before. All right, so we're girl talking,
Look at that.
and he said, Spencer said, and you're not sponsored by these guys, are you?
No, I don't. No, Bass Mafia stuff's what they give me all that, but that.
But he said that is a legit good spinnerbait box.
Yeah, it really is.
You know, a lot of spinnerbaits in there too,
Yeah.
can't you?
Yeah, you can. Most of them finesse ones,
Yeah.
but
Watch all fishermen. Look at that spool of braid, boys.
yeah,
I believe that'll last you a year.
3,000 yards. Oh, that'll last a couple of years. I've been using them probably since 2021.
I can't even tell who it is. It's rubbed off.
Yep, it goes very super braid. Now I got a whole nother bag of jerkbaits in here that I bought. I found a store in James River that had a bunch of specialty colors like that. Stuff I was thinking about for smallmouth. That's a color that's been.
Well, you realize you're a professional bass fisherman.
Yeah.
You should be getting stuff free, right?
Yeah, well,
Can't help yourself.
that's one of my favorites.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I do get all the jerkbaits I want for free as far as Yo-Zuri, but you gotta still have different brands too. That's a color right there. It's one of my favorite. They don't make anymore. I bought 10 or 12 of these. It's one of the best colors ever made.
It's clear with a little purple back to it.
Yeah, it's incredible.
You know, you may not know Brian Branham, but he's a guide at Rayburn, and
I do. I sit down with him one night and had dinner with him for about 3 or 4 hours.
that's a short dinner with Branham.
Yep, at
but
the stump.
he talks about every jerkbait brand
Yep.
and even models sink, float, or are neutral based upon water temp
Yep.
and I think pH in the water. So
Yeah.
you're right. One brand don't
Yeah.
get you through everything.
No, I mean, like I said, I'm sponsored by Yo-Zuri. I use their line, all their hard baits, but I do have other brands. I mean, I
Yeah.
tell people that all the time. I mean, I try and catch them on the Yo-Zuri, but sometimes you have to have a Megabass, and sometimes they won't bite the Megabass, they want a Yo-Zuri. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just, you know, kind of like crankbaits. Sometimes they eat the Strike King 1.5, sometimes you got to throw like a Duo Realis square bill or something like that, but you got to have a bunch of different options.
Yeah,
They
no
see a
doubt.
lot. Now, rod box is
Uh-oh.
roomy. You can fit a lot of rods in
Let's
there.
check it.
I try not to carry just a ton, you know.
Oh my gosh.
You fit a lot of stuff in there for the most part. I'll spend a
So
lot.
we were laughing. So your dad fished professionally how many years?
33 years, yep.
In 33 years, how many days do you think he left the ramp without a spinning rod?
Man, I can't remember. My dad, well, I can't remember growing up. When I was about 7 or 8 is when we really started throwing a shake head. And that was probably 8 or 9 years before it got famous. He stayed with a guy named Taco. We called him Taco. His name was Fred Bland. He's dead now. He lived down
I know who
in
Fred
Martin.
was, yeah.
And he basically, as far as I'm concerned, what I know growing up, he invented the shaky head called taco head. Man, growing up as a kid in summertime when they really eat a shaky head, well, we thought it was more of a summertime deal. Dad would take me to the lakes when he was off of tournaments and stuff. We'd go out west Arkansas like Derek Queen and Gillum and throw shaky head, just wrecked them. That's one of the reasons I fell in love with spinning tackle so much and why I like finesse fishing a lot. But that's the only time really I ever saw my dad throw a spinning rod, really. You know, my dad was a jig, spinnerbait, rattle trap. That was his deal.
Power fishing.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm going to say you got 30 in there?
Yeah, I probably got 25 or 30 rods in there, and I'd say about 10 spinning rods and reels.
Yeah, a lot of spinning rods.
Yep. But
You're an ARC guy, right?
I am. All ARC. Yep, all ARC.
ARC, ARK, guys, what we're talking about. That's his rod brand. Who's your reel manufacturer?
ARC.
Okay. I didn't know they made reels.
Oh, they do. I ain't saying it because I use their stuff and I'm sponsored by them. I'll tell you right now, if you want a good casting reel, the ARC casting reel is incredible. You know, they've got the G5, the G7. Actually, they got a G3 too, but this is the G8, which is their high end one. And I'm telling you right now, that's as good as a dial with Steez as any reel out there. I used a dial with Steez for like 4 years, and this G8 is identical to it, and it's like $400 cheaper. I think it's like $209 for that reel. I think it's what retail on it is. And then they've got the G7. This is the arch spinning reel, which is the gravity spinning reel. And the G stands for gravity, but this is their spinning reel, which is a great spinning reel. I mean, it's a good reel if you're in that $100, $110 market. I mean, it fishes about like $110, $115 spinning reel. I mean, being honest with you, it's a good spinning reel, but I've also got a couple Shimano C4 Stratics, which, I mean, you know, that reel right there, of course, that's the silver one, and you're just not going to beat that spinning reel all around. I mean, I'll tell anybody, I mean, if I had to buy one spinning reel, I'm going to go out and buy the Shimano, but we've got some spinning reels in the work. I got a Signature Series one that's coming out with our, hopefully by ICAST next year, and a spinning rod lineup, and I'm going to have a reel real close to this right here, this Shimano, because it's one of my favorites. But then they've got the, of course, this beat up, but this is the G7.
You always know the reel a guy likes because it's the beat up one. It's the one he's using all the time.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of them in here. They're in the back, but under I pretty much the G8 just
it's looped around that rod down there.
Lord, just cut that son of a gun off right there. But that's the G7, of course, like you said. And one of the issues, this is one because I went to all G8s this year, so I've still got a lot of the 7s that I'm using because I like them for like crankbaits and chatterbait stuff. And the G8 I like for like a jerkbait and pitching and flipping a jig. But the paint on these G7s rub off real bad, so that's why it looks a lot more beat up than it really is. But these G8s, we really got that fixed going into this year, the new arc reel, so the paint don't really rub off them at all. But that G7 is an excellent reel, and I think it's like a $190 reel, and it's as good as a Tatula, Dava Tatula SV or whatever you want to call them. But yeah, I mean, I love the arc reels. I mean, they're the best casting reels I've ever used. Now, I haven't used the G3 or the G5. That's their cheaper one. I think the G3 is like $99. The G5, I think, is like $130 or so. I don't quote me on prices for sure. I just know that they're around that price range. But the G7 and G8 are the most expensive. I know the G8's over $200, but it's my favorite, obviously. And of course, you know, you're gonna get what you pay for. The more expensive it is, the better it's going to be, honestly. But a lot of guys don't fish like we do, you know. I mean, we fish 4, 5, 6 days a week, and so you know that's why we need those reels like that. Obviously, a $99 to $150 reel is just not going to hold up for me. I spend about 270 days a year on the water, so you know that's why I use these high-end ones. But
that's a lot of time in the sunshine.
Yep.
And then the rain, and then the wind.
I don't enjoy the rain or the wind. Wind always blows when I don't want it to, and then when I'm whacking them on a rattle trap and I want it to blow 15, it's dead calm slick. You know?
It's not just us guys.
Yeah.
Taylor, you know anything about that?
Every time, it's always going to do what you don't want it to do.
Yeah.
So guys, we're going to show you, that's kind of a traditional mounting system, but and we wanted to show it to you this way. What Spencer does is he moves that top, that perspective one, above that brace. And then he's going to scooch the bottom one down further. We'll show you the result. And what that does is, if he wants to lift his trolling motor, that gives him about 3 inches of play right there. So we're going to flip it around and we'll show you exactly what they're doing, which is the way you ran it last year, right?
Yeah, and that's why I've been running it with the mounts I've had, because I mean, like where it is right here, if I get really shallow, I want to throw frogs, swim jig, and some nasty stuff, I'll have to make that, I can only raise it up as far as to right here.
Right.
And it has to be perfect. Now if I move this into right here, I've got, what is that, probably 7, 8 inches of play.
Yep.
So I'll have a lot more play of being able to raise that thing up.
And since the arms are variable, you can pretty much put it wherever you want to.
Exactly. Yeah, and that way I can get this scope here up higher too. I feel like it'd be a lot better as well.
We'll play with it and we'll show you all the end result. All right, so that's the net result we talked about, guys. So you see they raised that perspective mount up above the bracket. He could even raise it up a little more if he wanted to. But now he's got a good 5 inches probably that he can lift his trolling motor and not hit that bottom bracket. So that's slick setup. Okay guys, so some of you are going to order this kit and you're going to get it and you're going to have 2 different length bolts that look exactly the same. So explain the difference there, Taylor.
Yeah, so when you get your kit here, this is your packaging for the kit. When you pull everything out, you're going to have 2 of these knobs. Now if you have the perspective kit, you'll have a shorter knob in there as well. That'll be, you know, obviously way shorter than both of these, but both of these, you know, they're fairly similar, just, you know, about a 1/4 inch or so, 1/2 inch difference. Reason being, you want to use the long one on your transducer. I know, you know, it's kind of self-explanatory for some, but the shorter one is for your through here to go through your spacer for your forward arm to then go into your shaft clamp. So just when you go to install these at your house, just keep that in mind.
So the shorter one's a shaft clamp.
Shorter one's for your shaft clamp to the arm, longer one is for the arm to the transducer. So just keep that in mind.
And that'll be the same for the perspective and the traditional mount?
The forward, you'll only get the shortest one, which is that one.
Okay.
Because you won't have a spacer for this one because it sticks out in front of the trolling motor versus down beside it.
Gotcha.
So forward, perspective, you'll get this knob. Forward, you'll get the longer knob because of the offset clamp to drop down as far as you can along the side of the trolling motor.
Okay.